The Joint Military Command Center had been awake long before sunrise. Digital maps glowed across massive screens, intelligence officers quietly compared reports, and radio operators spoke in calm, measured voices. Every person inside the building moved with purpose, understanding that even a small mistake could affect thousands of lives. Security was tighter than usual because commanders from several branches of the armed forces were expected to arrive for an important strategic meeting later that morning. Despite the seriousness of the environment, experienced personnel carried themselves with quiet confidence, each focused on preparing for another demanding day. Among the first to arrive was Lieutenant Commander Maya Brooks, a 42-year-old black woman whose calm demeanor often caused people unfamiliar with her responsibilities to underestimate her. She wore a neatly pressed combat uniform with subdued insignia, practical black boots, and her dark hair was secured in a precise bun beneath her patrol cap. She carried no unnecessary decorations, no dramatic display of authority, and no entourage following behind her. Instead, she quietly placed a slim folder on a workstation near the center of the operations room and began reviewing satellite images, logistics reports, and operational timelines. Every few minutes she made careful notes in a small notebook before comparing them with information displayed on a secure digital tablet. Most of the officers working nearby greeted her with respectful nods instead of casual conversation. They knew her reputation. She had spent years leading difficult missions, coordinating international operations, and solving problems that many believed impossible. Those who worked with her admired not only her experience but also her habit of listening before speaking. She never raised her voice to command attention because she never needed to. Her decisions consistently earned the confidence of those around her. Across the airfield, another arrival attracted attention for very different reasons. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Carter, a decorated Navy SEAL in his mid-30s, stepped out of a military transport vehicle with the relaxed swagger of someone accustomed to admiration. Tall, athletic, and carrying himself with unmistakable confidence, Ryan had built a reputation through years of demanding deployments. Stories of his courage circulated throughout the special operations community, and he had become comfortable being recognized wherever he went. Fellow service members respected his accomplishments, but many also knew he occasionally allowed his confidence to become overconfidence. As Ryan entered the headquarters building, several junior personnel greeted him enthusiastically. He returned their greetings with a grin, exchanging jokes as though the day's high-level briefing were merely another routine assignment. While walking through the security checkpoint, he noticed photographs lining the hallway featuring previous multinational exercises. He paused long enough to admire several images before continuing toward the operations center. Inside the command room, Ryan's eyes swept across the busy workspace. He recognized a handful of officers from previous deployments, exchanged handshakes with a Marine colonel, and accepted a cup of coffee from an Air Force captain. Feeling completely at ease, he casually wandered between workstations while waiting for the briefing to begin. Eventually his attention settled on Maya. She remained quietly focused on her documents, seemingly unaware of the activity around her. From Ryan's perspective, she looked like another staff officer responsible for paperwork and coordination. He noticed the simplicity of her uniform and assumed she occupied a supporting administrative role rather than an operational leadership position. With a playful smile, Ryan walked toward her desk. "Morning," he said confidently. Maya looked up and offered a polite nod. "Good morning." Ryan glanced briefly at the map spread across her workstation before folding his arms. "Looks like you've been busy." "There is always work to prepare before an operation," Maya answered calmly. Ryan chuckled. "I guess somebody has to keep the paperwork organized." Maya simply returned her attention to the documents. Rather than recognizing the subtle signal that the conversation had ended, Ryan continued speaking. "So," he asked with a grin that suggested he expected everyone nearby to enjoy the joke, "what's your rank? Or are you still waiting for your first promotion?" Several officers within earshot immediately looked away from their monitors. An Army major quietly stopped typing. An intelligence analyst froze halfway through reviewing a report. A communications officer slowly removed his headset. The room did not become completely silent, but an unmistakable tension settled over the nearby workstations. Maya closed her notebook carefully before meeting Ryan's eyes again. Her expression remained calm. There was no anger. No embarrassment. No attempt to defend herself. My rank, she replied evenly, is listed exactly where it needs to be. Ryan laughed softly, believing he had landed a harmless joke. Fair enough. He shrugged and turned slightly, expecting the nearby officers to smile along with him. Instead, nobody laughed. The Marine colonel who had greeted Ryan only minutes earlier stared at the floor. The Air Force captain quietly focused on arranging briefing materials. Even the civilian analysts avoided making eye contact. Ryan noticed the unusual reactions but dismissed them as pre-meeting tension. He had no idea that almost everyone in the operations center knew precisely who Maya Brooks was. They also knew that within the next few minutes, the arrival of the senior leadership team would reveal a truth that would completely change the atmosphere of the room, and leave the confident Navy SEAL questioning every assumption he had just made. The operations center settled into an uneasy silence after the brief exchange. Keyboards continued clicking, printers quietly produced updated intelligence packets, and encrypted radios transmitted short bursts of information, yet an invisible tension lingered in the room. Ryan Carter leaned against a nearby table, still convinced his joke had been harmless. He noticed several officers avoiding eye contact with him but assumed they were simply focused on the upcoming briefing. After years of serving on difficult missions, he believed confidence was expected of someone in his position. What he failed to recognize was the difference between confidence and making assumptions about people he had never met. Maya Brooks returned to reviewing operational maps as though nothing unusual had happened. She calmly compared satellite imagery with weather forecasts, marking several locations with a digital stylus before passing a secure tablet to a nearby intelligence analyst. The analyst accepted it immediately and thanked her with obvious respect. Updated logistics estimates are complete, ma'am. Excellent, Maya replied. Please distribute the revised route projections before the briefing begins. Right away, ma'am. Ryan noticed the interaction but still paid little attention. He assumed the analyst was simply being polite. He walked toward the coffee station where two officers were quietly speaking. So, Ryan said with a grin, everyone seems awfully serious this morning. Neither officer answered immediately. Finally one of them forced a small smile. Big meeting. Ryan nodded confidently. I've been through plenty of those. The officer hesitated before speaking again. You may want to pay close attention today. Ryan laughed. I always do. Across the room, final preparations accelerated. Additional classified folders were arranged neatly around the large conference table. Digital displays switched to secure operational maps covering several regions. Communications specialists confirmed encrypted connections with remote commands. Every movement reflected careful coordination built through years of professional discipline. A security officer entered the operations center. They're arriving. Instantly the room became even quieter. Personnel straightened their uniforms. Conversations ended. Every chair was pushed neatly beneath its table. Ryan recognized the familiar routine that preceded the arrival of senior leadership. He stood confidently near the conference table, expecting another standard command briefing. Heavy doors opened. Several senior officers entered first, followed by 4 United States generals representing different branches participating in the joint operation. Every person inside the room immediately stood at attention. Ryan did the same. The generals acknowledged the room briefly before continuing forward. Ryan expected them to head directly toward the conference table. Instead, something entirely unexpected happened. All 4 changed direction simultaneously. Without hesitation, they walked directly toward Maya Brooks. The room remained perfectly silent. Ryan watched with growing confusion. The lead general stopped several feet from Maya. In one sharp motion, he rendered a formal salute. The other three generals followed immediately. The synchronized movement echoed across the quiet operations center. "Good morning, Commander Brooks," the senior general said respectfully. "It is an honor to have you leading today's coordination." Maya returned each salute with calm professionalism. "Good morning, generals." Her voice remained steady. "Thank you for arriving early. We have several time-sensitive matters requiring immediate attention." Ryan felt every confident thought disappear. He stared in disbelief. The woman he had casually questioned only minutes earlier was clearly someone of extraordinary responsibility. None of the generals showed even the slightest hint of hesitation in addressing her with complete professional respect. One general handed Maya a classified folder. "We've reviewed your recommendations." "Excellent," Maya answered. "We'll discuss implementation after the regional updates." Another general smiled. "Your planning team has exceeded every expectation." "Credit belongs to everyone involved," Maya replied. "Successful operations are always the result of disciplined teamwork." The officers surrounding Ryan remained perfectly composed, though several had noticed his stunned expression. Only then did Ryan begin replaying their earlier conversation in his mind. His joke. His assumptions. Her calm response. The silence from everyone nearby. It suddenly made sense. A senior army colonel quietly stepped beside Ryan. Without embarrassment or criticism, he spoke in a low voice. "You didn't know?" Ryan swallowed hard. "No. Commander Brooks oversees strategic coordination for this multinational mission." Ryan looked toward Maya as she discussed operational priorities with the generals using precise language and complete command of every detail displayed across the digital maps. She answered complex questions immediately. She referenced logistics, intelligence, humanitarian planning, communications, and risk assessments without consulting notes. Every general listened carefully. None interrupted her. When she made recommendations, they acknowledged them thoughtfully. There was no doubt who held the room's confidence. Ryan felt the weight of his earlier words settle heavily on his shoulders. His reputation had always been built on courage under pressure, yet this situation required something entirely different. Humility. For the first time that morning, he understood that leadership could not be measured by appearance, age, or assumptions. Real authority often belonged to those who spoke the least, listened the most, and earned respect through years of disciplined service rather than personal recognition. As the briefing officially began, Maya looked briefly toward Ryan. There was no anger in her expression. No satisfaction. No attempt to embarrass him. Only quiet professionalism. She gave him a simple nod before turning back toward the operational map. Ryan returned the nod silently. In that single moment, he learned a lesson far more valuable than anything written in a field manual. Respect should always come before judgment, because true leaders rarely need to announce who they are.